I love playing spell builds in Souls games and Elden Ring. However, especially in Dark Souls 1, spell builds have a reputation of being incredibly overpowered, and it's definitely not without a reason. At the same time, From Software games are built in a way where if something seems too overpowered, you can always apply restrictions to increase the challenge, and one of the classic ways to challenge oneself is to complete the games at level 1. So I thought about doing this with only spells. Now of course there's a caveat that the start distribution of the one class that starts at level 1 can be pretty abysmal for certain types of spell casting. So I should decide what type of spells I'm going to use. Dark Souls 1 has 3 categories of spells to choose from. There are pyromancies, miracles, and sorceries. Pyromancies would be an obvious choice as they don't have stat requirements, they scale only from pyroflame upgrades, they are remarkably powerful, and you cannot beat the game with pyromancies only, because there are a few mandatory bosses that are completely immune to fire. Now, I could always bend the rules a little bit, or use glitches to bypass the immune bosses, but number 1, I just don't like doing that, and number 2, I don't think a pyro only no leveling run would be that interesting, because aside from bosses that are straight up immune to fire, it would just be more or less a normal soul level 1 run. So, what about miracles? Well, first of all, no class starts with a miracle that can do damage, so it's technically not even possible to get out of the asylum without resorting to major glitches. But even if I did start the challenge after the asylum, the highest faith starting class in the game is the cleric, with 14 faith. And remember, there is no stat boosting gear in Dark Souls 1 at all. The only damage in miracles you can cast at 14 faith are greatsword dances. Good luck killing anything with them, let alone finishing the game. That leaves me with sorceries. The class that starts with sorceries is the aptly named sorcerer, and it's also the only starting class that stands a chance of actually completing this challenge. As I mentioned before, there is no stat boosting equipment in Dark Souls 1, so my 15 int and 15 attunement is what I'm dealing with for the rest of the game. So let's start the challenge. The asylum goes pretty normally. 30 basic soul arrows is thankfully more than enough to kill the asylum demon. After that, I head straight for the undead burg, as the key to unlocking more spells is there, sold by the undead merchant. Running past everything to say spells... running past everything, I take care of the crossbow guys at the top before fighting the Taurus himself. The fight is fairly easy, simply staying away from the boss and getting in a couple of spells after every attack gets the job done. But you can already see the problem that is going to arise in this challenge. Dark Souls 1 has no FP. Instead, all spells have a limited number of casts per attunement slot, meaning I have a limited pool of damage for every fight. And without the ability to increase int or attunement, that limited pool is going to be really limited. Luckily, at this point there are still a bunch of things I can do to get my damage up. To do that, I head first past the dragon. I thought he was supposed to fly away at this point. I sprint past the gate ambush to grab the basement key. Then I die to some random hollows that I had no reason to fight at all. And now the gate is closed. Good thing I picked up the master key as the starting gift. For now, I head back to the lower undead burg to free Griggs, who is the first spell merchant in the game. After being freed, he appears in Filing Shrine and sells me all other spells that can be used with 15 int. Great Soul Arrow and Heavy Soul Arrow. And that's it. That's all the spells I can use in Dark Souls 1 without leveling up my character. Let's quickly talk about them. Great Soul Arrow and Basic Soul Arrow are the same thing, except the former does about twice the damage, so it will be the main tool I use throughout the run. They have a decently long casting animation and a tiny bit of tracking, but I really mean just a tiny bit. Enemies can avoid my spells by moving to the side a bit. The big saving grace for this run is the fact that spells in Dark Souls 1 don't cost stamina to cast, so I can spend all I have on dodging. Heavy Soul Arrow does a little bit more damage than Great Soul Arrow, but has less casts and such an incredibly long cast time that it's almost impossible to use it without taking damage. And taking damage is not exactly my strong suit this run, so it will be retired pretty quickly. To add to these, I'm going to use some utility spells later on, but that is all I have to deal damage, so I'm going to really need to squeeze out the damage everywhere I can. Anyway, by retrieving souls I left in the parish earlier and picking up a bunch of consumable souls, I can afford the new spells, and then head to the Valley of the Drakes for the Red Tearstone Ring. There is no avoiding it. It is one of the best damage rings in Dark Souls 1, and I am going to need it at some point. Then I head further into the parish to obtain another really good ring for this run. After dealing with a ton of enemies by cutting them backwards to the ends of the earth and having a proper sorcery duel, I rescue Lothric from his cage, so I could demonstrate the gravity magic to him. He was so happy, he left me 5 humanities and the ring when he left. What a great guy. The Ring of Favor and Protection gives me stamina, health, endurance. All useful things considering how little Sorcerer has to begin with. For further upgrades, I need a bunch of souls, so why not test my new spells on gargoyles? The damage is actually decent, but not enough to bring down the first one before the second one shows up. I also realize how rusty I am because I tanked just about everything I could. Good thing I grabbed that ring earlier. Despite all the mistakes, gargoyles went down on the first attempt, giving me 10,000 souls and allowing me to ring the first spell. This, combined with the rest of the consumable souls I have and a tiny bit of farming, is enough to buy Bellowing Dragon Crest Ring that will boost my damage even further. Since Lothric is gone, I can grab the second Firekeeper soul, and that's almost enough Estus upgrades to fully heal me from 0. Yeah, my HP is not great. There are still a couple of pieces of gear that will boost my damage output, so I head for exactly that next. But to access it, I have to kill the Hydra. There is no shot I can take care of golems myself and still have enough spells to kill it, so I let the Hydra herself deal with the golems for me. And then, slowly but surely, free aim spells at the heads to chop them one by one. Which is a bit annoying as always, but gets the job done, giving me the Dusk Crown Ring. This ring halves my HP, but gives 50% more cast, rounded down. It sounds like it will be necessary for this run, but with only 2 ring slots? If I desperately need damage, I would rather increase my damage per cast to make fights shorter, than increase the amount of casts I have. It will be useful for another reason though. Moving past that, at the end of the lake, the Golden Crescent Golem is guarding the second magic merchant. Dealing with him is long and tedious, since he is super resistant to magic and somehow manages to dodge a bunch of my spells. But with enough patience, he goes down, allowing me to talk to Dusk and buy the Ulasil Ivory Catalyst, which is the best spell catalyst at low int, as well as some utility spells. Then I need to walk all the way back to where the Golden Golem was to obtain Dusk's Dress, and more importantly, Dusk's Crown. Now I have all the items that can help me boost my damage and almost all the spells I'm going to use. With nothing else left to pick up, it's time to start knocking out some bosses. Since I am nearby, the first boss in my crosshairs is Moonlight Butterfly. This boss is a bit resistant to magic, but has a small HP pool. It goes down without any problems at all. Next, I head straight back to the Asylum, and here's the primary use for the Dusk Crown Ring. Equipping and unequipping it sets my HP at 50%. And falling into straight Demon's Arena gets me down into the Red Tearstone range. The boss is pretty easy, I run behind him and cast spells when he casts his AoE attacks, or does the Butzel. Repeat until he is dead. This gives me a chunk of souls as well as a Titanite. That won't be useful because Catalysts in Dark Souls 1 are not upgradable. With the boss's souls, I can grab the Lingering Dragon Crest Ring for later, and the Crest of Artorias from Andre. And I might as well use the crest now and go to Sif. Up until now the bosses caused me little trouble, but the good boy of souls is going to put an end to the easy streak. He is technically a late game boss, even though he can be accessed almost immediately at the start of the game, and he just one-shots me with most of his attack. Seeing this, I decided I might as well do the fight with RTSR, which I totally intentionally found out can be set up by getting hit by the NPCs in the forest. The only problem is that his jumps do a tiny bit of damage, which will eventually kill me when I'm on that little HP. so I have to try and roll it when I can. Doing this fight took a few attempts, but eventually Abyss Walker's best friend goes down, and honestly, my damage seems not at all bad at this point. But of course, it's just the start of the game, and there will be some further complications down the line. For now though, it's a good time to head down to ring the second bell of awakening, by defeating the ultimate obstacle to pyromancers, Quilak. The boss goes more or less the same as it always does. I stay to Quilak's sides to avoid her melee attacks, though she tends to push me out in front of her a lot more than I remember. I don't know if that's something that changed in the remaster, or if it's due to lengthy cast animation. The biggest difficulty is minding the lava pools and not getting trapped when I need to dash away from the AoE spell. After one failed attempt, I got it right and got to ring the second bell and unlock the Sands Fortress. Before I head there, there's one more boss to take care of nearby. It's Ceaseless. Just about everybody and their dog knows at this point that Ceaseless can be cheesed by kiting him to the entrance after picking up the armor at the end of the area. However, I don't like doing that on low level runs. The reason is that if anything goes wrong after I pick up the armor and I die on the way back, which happened to me before, it almost soft locks the run, because it's almost impossible to get back to him when he's active without getting hit by his fireball, which might be the most heavily hitting attack in the game. So what I typically do is activate the boss and stand right next to the wall right here. Here he only ever does his slow hand slam, which is very easy to avoid and there is no chance of getting screwed, since if I don't pick up the armor, boss is inactive even if I die and have to re-enter. But this time everything goes smoothly. In fact, that kill might even be faster than cheating him. On my way back, I grabbed the Killaranthi ring from the Great Hollow to help with big running sections. And speaking of running sections, time to go to Sands Fortress. There's one useful thing for me in this area, so as soon as I remember how to actually get through everything, I get to the ballroom. Does that count as a pun? And use the balls to break the wall and kill the Serpent Man, so I can get to Logan. I only then remembered that I could have used Serpent Man himself to break the wall, but whatever gets the job done. Logan's spells all have really high int requirements, so he's not that useful, but he will sell me the second copy of Great Soul Arrow, which do stack when you put them in different attunement slots. I want to grab that before I head further into the game, so I grab the shortcut key and head to the Firelink before taking on Iron Golem. Iron Golem fight goes smoothly. Even though I didn't position him properly to knock him off, my damage here is enough to almost finish him off while he's in his stucker state. With a few more hits, he goes down, and now it's time to head for Anor Londo. Anor Londo has two notoriously difficult running sections that both get completely trivialized by one of the most underrated and underused spells in the game, Hidden Body. Though to be fair, the Rafter section isn't that difficult anyway, if you just let the Guardians jump to their deaths. In the Archer section though, casting Hidden Body just before going down to the Winged Demons allows me to approach the Silver Knight without being shot at, and easily parry him. As long as I don't forget where my parry button is. Easily parry him and move on to the Smo and Orsten fight. Gold Skin Duo here were once considered to be one of, if not the hardest fight in the Souls games. And oh, how far have we gone since then. As per usual, the first phase of the fight is the most difficult. I slowly kite the bosses around waiting for openings to shoot at Ornstein, while keeping an eye on the big boy, as he can easily one-shot me with some of his attacks. Ornstein is no slouch when it comes to damage either, but his HP bar is pretty small. He dodges a few shots here and there, but goes down leaving me with more than half my spells still available. Once the fight moves into the second phase, it's practically over. Big Smo input reads you, meaning boss's AI reacts to the actions you perform. In this case, I think the intention was to make Smo use one of his long-range gap closer attacks when you cast spells or use items at a distance. Unfortunately, his AI doesn't take into account the presence of a massive pillar between him and I. So by making sure he is positioned that way, and manually aiming and timing spells to avoid hitting his hammer, I can more or less trivialize the second part of the fight. S and O down, which finally gives me the Lord Vessel. Normally defeating small and Austin signifies moving over the difficulty crest. The bosses up ahead do have some quirks, but they aren't super difficult, and now you have access to pretty much everything in the game, and you are starting to get up there in levels. None of that is true for me, of course, because most of the equipment that could help me I already picked up in the early levels, and the whole point of the challenge is not leveling up, so it's only going to get harder from here. Before heading for the Great Soul bosses, I pop back into the Honor Londo for the Havel's armor set. It will come in handy in a bit. Then I go down into the catacombs. I go down. These guys are the most difficult boss so far. You don't have to rub it in, Framt. I decided to take a break from dying in the catacombs and go kill Capra instead. The plan was to use Hidden Body and kill the guy before the dogs could aggro, but I got delayed by the bandits outside and entered the arena right as the Hidden Body ran out, so the good old staircase method it is. Once the dogs are dealt with, Capra himself is not much of a threat. This whole detour was really to buy blooming purple moss from the female undead merchant, as I might need some for Nito. Anyway, over to Pinwheel. This boss is known to be a total pushover. Next time I focus more on taking out his clones, so I don't have fireballs spammed at me from all directions. Thankfully, second try the charms, otherwise it would be rather embarrassing. Then I perfectly navigate the dark passages of the Tomb of the Giants because I definitely totally remember where to go. Grave Lord Nito is the reason I grabbed Havel's armor set. He has a bunch of respawning skeletons that can only be permanently killed with Holy Infused weapon, something I'm not allowed to use. So I decided to just tank both skeletons and Nito. Nito's attacks are easy to avoid, and he wipes out his skeletons when he does his magic AoE. But they of course respawn and can easily bleed me or just do a bunch of damage at inopportune moments. This took a couple of attempts. I don't really know if tanking with Havel's armor was the best thing I could have done here, but it did work out at the end. I am especially proud of the fact that on the winning attempt, I dodged his Toxic Greatsword dance attack twice while heavy rolling. First Great Soul is mine. Onto my least favorite area in the game. I know, what a shocker, it's Lost Isleth. First on the plate is Demon Fire Sage. He's just like Stray Demon, except he's red, tanky, and placed in a smaller arena that is filled with annoying branches that get in my way and in my camera. This actually turned out to be one of the more difficult fights in the base game. He one-shots me with most of his melee attacks, likes to position himself really awkwardly in the corner where dodging his magic is far more difficult, and all around is just an annoying boss. But quite a few attempts later, he goes down. Tanky though he is, I still have more than enough spells, even without RTSR. Good thing the next boss is just as annoying as the previous one. Normally, here I would tank the lava to go to a better platform, but there is no shot I can do that with my tiny HP bar, so I have to stand near the entrance and fight him in a tiny space near the wall. I do however manage to chop off one of his centipede arms and kill it for the lava walking ring, which allows me on the next attempt to fight him on a better platform. Once the boss approaches, it's time to run in and experience the joy of fighting a large, weirdly shaped Souls boss while standing underneath him. Yes, Centipede is the expert of cameramancy. Luckily he is weak to magic damage, so the fight doesn't take too long. Next, going past the pointless lava sea, filled with the dragon butts. At least it no longer assaults your eyeballs quite as hard as it used to, and towards the Bed of Chaos. Bed of Chaos is the same as it always is for this run, just except for the fact that I can't use the Firebomb strat, so I do the good old quit cheese. I say cheese, the only thing it does is save me some time running either around the arena or back to the boss if I die. The ending of the fight is quite frantic, as by some miracle, or I guess more like by some magic in this case, I managed to avoid the firestorm and have a brief battle against Soul's lock-on gods, trying to finish her off before she casts another one. 2 Great Souls are in my pocket now. Before I move on to the next 2, there is a bit of cleanup to do. There are still a couple of side bosses in the main game to take care of. I first had to now Dark Honor Launder, kill the Firekeeper because why not, I needed a soul, trust me. Then it's over to her boss, Dark Sun Gwendolyn. He has 3 attacks, and if you played Dark Souls 1 before, you know what they are and how to avoid them. So, fun fact, if you die in Dark Honor Launder, your respawn is set automatically to the first bonfire, which wouldn't be an issue if the Firekeeper was still alive. Pro tip, kill her after the Gwendolyn. Like I said, the boss isn't difficult. Strafe for arrows, pillars for the small magic balls, roll through the large magic ball, repeat until the boss is dead. Next one. Next one is Priscilla. Normally I would just kill the dragon on the bridge and jump attack the dragon butt at the end to open the path to the boss. But I decided that even though I technically don't do damage to the butt, jump attacking it would still be against the rules. So I actually go through the area the normal way. For the room with a bunch of wheel skeletons, I use Hidden Body to sneak up on them and take them out one by one without an issue. Priscilla herself is interesting, mainly because it's difficult to get her out of her invisibility with spells, and it's hard enough to hit things with these spells even when I can see them. I have to free aim at where I think she is, using footprints as an indicator. I also really have to move around a lot, because if she gets a swing off, even if I block, it one-shots me. On my second attempt, after a bunch of running around, I do cross her off the list of the remaining bosses. One final side boss remains, and it's of course the Gaping Dragon. To the sewers, yay! No cool ninja reptiles in these ones, just gross blobs that fall on your head. I first head over to the channeler to get rid of him, though maybe I should have left him to provide some challenge during the fight, because the boss sure won't. It's Gaping Dragon, the only challenge here is not falling asleep mid-fight. The last 2 Great Soul bosses remain, and both of them are going to be tricky. I first head down to New Londo. This is one of the areas I find easier to just clear out gradually, rather than trying to rush through a bunch of ghosts. A tip for dealing with the ghost house at the end. Sprint past it to the platform right behind it, and snipe the ghost from there if you have any ranged attack. You can kill them with melee here too, but it can get a bit messy. After that, you won't be bothered by quite so many ghosts in the house and on the ladder to Ingward. I open the seal and head to the Duke's Archives. Everything here is resistant to magic, so I run past everything, go up to the first encounter with Thief, get killed, then get out of... So this will be a little secret. If I knew beforehand that that's how it works, I would have just done the Duke skip. But once you get trapped by Thief, the only way to get out is by hitting the snake and getting the key, which for some reason you can't do with a projectile spell. So, moving on. I get through the rest of the archives normally. And here's the reason I wanted to do all of that before proceeding with 4 Kings and Thief boss fights. Up to this point, I was enjoying my Ring of Favor and Protection, but time has come for it to go. I'm pretty sure for the rest of the game I'm going to need both of my ring slots for damage. First off, Thief. He is strongly resistant to magic and has a pretty large amount of HP, so I'm pulling out all the stops for this one. After looking around a bit, I find that equipping and unequipping Dusk Crown Ring and then jumping off right side here sets up the RTSR. Bellowing Dragon Crest Ring and Dusk Crown all go on for this one, as well as the rest of the Dusk Dress, for the good curse resistance, because yes, even though I die in one hit, I can still get cursed after the fact. Fighting Thief in RTSR is tricky. The hitbox on his crystals is not very clear. There's a ton of strange geometry in the area, which sometimes is as detrimental to the boss as it is to me. The strategy I settled upon at the end is baiting his side breath from close up, and running back and shooting him with spells. The damage is actually better than I was expecting, and despite my worries, and a couple of whiffed spells, I still come out on top with 11 Great Soul arrows left to spare. The third Great Soul is mine to burn. The 4 Kings are a problem. Their combined HP is the largest in the game, and this is not only the test of overall damage, but also a test of DPS. I will need to kill each king before the next one pops out, otherwise the fight can turn into a complete mess. And to make things even worse, I am forced to give up one of the rings to wear the Covenant of Artorias. This is tough. I set up RTSR on the Wraith Knight over here by intercepting his charge attack with my face. He will usually do this attack if I sprint at him. The fight itself is really RNG dependent. I need the kings to attack me with melee attacks that are punishable. If they decide to spam magic or grab attacks, it wastes a ton of time, and if they don't follow up attacks that are combos, I cannot punish them either. This is where the slowish cast animation of Soul Arrow is starting to suck. I only get a few damage opportunities here. To deal with the homing projectile attack, I have to experiment a bit with my armor and magic absorption. At the end, heal into full and simply walking into it without blocking gets me back into RTSR range. This was possible by the skin of my teeth. On the winning attempt, I actually didn't manage to get any of the kings before the next one spawned, but I just got lucky and the spawning kings decided to twiddle their thumbs and do nothing for a bit, which is not guaranteed to happen. They can easily join in or spam magic at you from afar. In fact, my damage was so bad here, and because I couldn't hit them as they disappeared, I got the legendary 5 kings. Prior to this, I only ever saw it happen on New Game Plus. With the base game almost done, it's time to head over to the DLC. As per tradition, DLC features the most difficult content in the game, or rather, being the first DLC of the series, Artorias of the Abyss is what established this tradition. To get there, I first need to clear out the first room in Duke Archives, which is actually easier said than done, because all of these crystal hollows are pretty resistant to magic, and they're surprisingly agile for crystallized zombies. Defeating the dejected looking crystal golem to the right gives me the broken pendant. First DLC boss time, the Sanctuary Guardian. Much like for Sif, I go in the fight in full glass cannon damage mode. This guy is also resistant to magic, even more resistant to Sif in fact. But his HP is not that high, so I should have enough soul arrows to kill him. RTSR is set up by inflicting toxic on myself, with dunk pies, henceforth known as the poop method. Both dunk pies and blooming purple moss can be bought from the female undead merchant. This guy is pretty fast. The only reliable punish window with soul arrow is after his charge attacks, which can be baited by getting hit by the wind. I sometimes manage to hit him twice after the charge, and sometimes the second spell misses, but again, his HP is not that high, so running out is not that much of a concern yet. Other than that, I make sure to avoid lightning AoE on the ground and patiently wait for my opportunities, and eventually the fight goes my way. I run past everything in the forest, there is nothing to get here, and straight to the next boss, the namesake of the DLC. I set up either TSR with Pook method, go in, and oh, that damage stinks. Yeah, as I said at the start, magic is pretty overpowered in Dark Souls 1. So guess what FromSoft did about that when they released the DLC? Did they balance the spells to be more in line with the rest of the game? No, they made a bunch of even more overpowered spells, but to compensate, made everything in the DLC super resistant to magic. This damage might not seem terrible to you, but remember, this is every single piece of equipment that boosts my damage at play, and I am doing less than 200 damage per Great Soul Arrow, and it's actually going to get worse. For Artorias, his charge attacks, both the poke and the swipe, are safe to counter with Soul Arrow, as well as the big leaping attack, though he can jump away from the spell sometimes. And of course the buffing animation, which I cannot stop, but it doesn't really matter since I'm fighting him in the RTSR mode anyway. A few intense attempts later, Artorias goes down with a few Great Soul Arrows left to spare. That, however, is where the fun times might be coming to an end in the DLC. Both Calamite and Manus have more HP and even higher magic resistance than Artorias. I am not sure exactly how much more magic resistance, however. I distinctly remember this info being on the wiki, but none of the modern remaster wikis seems to have it anymore. Anyway, there's one way to know for sure if I'll have enough damage to deal with them, and it's to try it. I go through Ulasil, the hidden body is a lifesaver here. This mimic drops the key to access Goth, and that is necessary for Calamite. Then I hidden body my way through to the Ulasil Tension bonfire, and then return to Goth so he can help make the fight against the Black Dragon a bit more fair. Calamite first. The run back to him is super annoying, because of the docks on the way. The RTSR can be set up by doing this set of jumps down into his arena, and the damage test says 121 damage with the Great Soul Arrow and 63 damage with regular one. Mathing it out, I have 6730 total damage, which is enough to kill him, barely. Well, then I guess I'm going to try it. The fight is honestly pretty straightforward. It's just long and I cannot afford to miss many spells or get hit by him. His fire breath attacks are good damage opportunities, as is the Calamity Grab, and the best of all is the charge, if I can bait the tail slam after. The head swipes can be pretty annoying, they have lingering hitboxes, dodging them backwards while at ranged works most of the time though. The grueling 7-minute fight ended with my victory, but I had to go through nearly all of my spells. One final DLC boss remains. Manus has a larger health bar than Calamite, but if he has the same or lower magic resistance, it might still be possible to do. And the damage test says 150 damage per Great Soul Arrow and 74 per normal one. That comes out to 6000 total damage with Great Soul Arrows, and the rest can be finished off with 9 normal ones. It can be done, which means it needs to be done. Manus is a very tricky boss. He's the harbinger of later forms of boss design. He has delayed attacks, mixed with fast combos you have to recognize and dodge on reaction. He demands pretty precise roll timings. He activates extra abilities on reaching about 60% HP that do devastating damage and are hard to avoid. Doing this fight perfectly on low damage proved to be by far the hardest part of this challenge. It didn't help that the run back to this boss is pretty long. I used the shortcut to the Old Seal Township, not because it's shorter, but because it allows me to kill this Darkcaster. Otherwise she becomes a massive pain in the backside. Literally. RTSR is set up by Poop Method. Luckily, Manus allows you to punish most of his attacks from range. The only ones I couldn't safely go for were the swipes and the fast combo. Sometimes he did follow up the hand slam with the first combo, but in all of my attempts, I only saw it 2 or 3 times, and the hand slams were one of the most common openings he gave, so I just took that risk. For this big overhead hand slam, it's later than you think, and then a little bit later than that. I swear sometimes it feels like I'm rolling it after the attack lands, and it still works out somehow. At some point I also went and grabbed the silver pendant to make it easier to deal with his dark spells. I did 3.5 hours of attempts in total, and on my 69th attempt, the boss finally went down. So yeah, despite the large HP bars, and ridiculous amounts of magic resistance, Dark Souls 1 DLC can be beaten with only spells and no level ups. When I started this run, I didn't think I would be able to finish it. I thought I won't have enough damage for late game bosses, or that I will fail to pass the DPS check on 4 Kings. I certainly didn't expect the DLC to be possible with these constraints. But here I am. The only thing standing between me and victory is Gwyn, the Lord of Cinder. He doesn't have a particularly large amount of HP, nor is he resistant to magic. He can be a tough cookie, but with everything I had to go through to get here, this should be no issue. Of course, the game had to put one final stick in my wheels. Gwyn input reads my spells, and this time it's not the good kind of input reading. He just dodges all of my spells, consistently, unless I parry him. To parry him, however, I need to be able to block the first attack of his fast combo, since I can't repulse him and bait the slow combo with Essence Flasks. The best combination of stability and fire absorption on a shield available at my measly 9 strength is the Heater Shield. But I forgot that exists, so I went with the Target Shield. I mean, Target Shield has a better parry animation, yeah, that's why I chose it. Testing whether it can block the first swing of the Gwyn's fast combo? Negative. Guess I have to upgrade it. Of course, I wasn't really planning on upgrading anything in this run, so I had to go get the Ember and materials first. I stop at plus 10 because chunks can be a pain to collect. Let's see if it's enough. It is! So now I just need to chain a bunch of parries together. For this fight, I wear the Bellowing Dragon Crust ring for the damage and Chloranthus, so I always have the full stamina to block his attacks. It takes a few attempts to bring down the Lord of Cinder, and the final boss of this challenge. And it's done. The answer is a resounding yes. Not only can you beat Dark Souls Remastered with only spells at base level, but you can full clear the game like that. In the description you can find a link to a compilation of all the full successful boss attempts of this run. I guess I'll see you in Dark Souls 2.